Hi, I'm Tom Fishman. I'm the CEO of Starts With Us, a new movement to overcome our culture of division. Today, we're going to talk about the Facebook algorithm, how pop culture fandoms foreshadowed political tribalism, and how curiosity, compassion, and courage are going to save the world without us needing to add another verse to Kumbaya. Stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baren's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baren. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baren is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baren.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. The partisan division is everywhere. It's happening, of course, in Washington, D.C., but it's happening in family gatherings. It's happening inside and outside of our own organizations. And all too often, leaders like us feel that we've got to batten down the hatches and create more rules around these ever-creasing in lines of division. And of course, those rules create even more division. It's costing us in engagement, it's costing us in morale, and it's definitely costing us in corporate culture. But what can we actually do? Well, stay tuned, because that's exactly where we're going in the next 2 episodes as we sit down with Tom Fishman. He is the CEO of a company that has created a movement to overcome the culture wars. That company is StartsWithUs. We'll tell you a lot more about that as we get on. As always, we need your help in staying relevant, so please do us a favor, and wherever you tune in from, whatever the podcast app or platform is you use, do us a favor, rate, review, and subscribe. It really matters to us, and it really makes a huge difference. If you are a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners, and we are honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. By the way, I know you're curious. My name is Dov Baren, and I am your host, and I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything by transforming meaning into action. Curious to know more? Simply go to dovbaron.com. That's DOVBARON.com. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. Our guest for the next 2 episodes is Tom Fishman. Prior to becoming CEO with StartsWithUs, Tom spent over 12 years building and scaling businesses, audiences, and highly engaged communities at the interface of culture, media, and technology. Tom was most recently the GM at the video technology company Echo, bringing first-of-its-kind shoppable interactive video experiences to market. Previously, he led product strategy for Facebook's original content team and led digital at MTV as SVP strategy and operations, amassing a digital community of over 250 million fans globally. Today, Tom, as I said, is the CEO of StartsWithUs, of which I am honored to be a founding member. StartsWithUs is a non-partisan civil movement to overcome America's bitter culture wars, using media technology to foster independent thinking, healthier communication, and courageous collaboration across our differences. StartsWithUs was founded by Daniel Lubetzky, who you may be familiar with. He is the founder of Kind Snacks, you know, those kind bars you get? That's Daniel. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me to welcome the cultural DJ himself, Mr. Tom Fishman.
Ooh, cultural DJ. First time I've heard that. I love that. I'm so grateful and excited to be here with you, Dov. How you doing?
I'm good to have you on, mate. Really, as a friend of mine and I were talking about you just yesterday. Deke Copenhaver, who is also a member. We were talking about Tom and like, oh yeah, I'm looking forward to having a chat with him. He's like, yeah, I just got off. It was really good, and so we're glad to have you here.
Yeah, we had a great chat, and looking forward to another one with you today.
Yeah. So where I'd like to start, because StartsWithUs is, you know, everything I talk about, as you know, is emotional source code, and it's about how we find meaning in our lives, et cetera, et cetera. And StartsWithUs is so much of that. But what's the origin story of what gives your life meaning? Because I think that oftentimes we have to go through a few things to get to that. What's the origin story of what gives your life meaning?
I think I, from an early age, found a lot of personal value and worth through achievement and through an ability to, I always have had kind of a chip on my shoulder about some of what you defined as circumstances.
Yeah.
And the way that I feel and have always felt like I have worth and can bring value into this world, be it for my family or whomever, is to create and to achieve. And part of that makes me feel self-conscious to say, because it encoded in that is the validation of others, and I'm aware of that. But that drives me in many ways, is the sense that every day I can do something that I think is valuable, but that those around me, those who I care about, think is valuable, and that I'm improving, and that you don't feel that every single day, but it does get me out of bed to take a swing at it every day.
Right. Well, prior to Starts With Us, you were with MTV.
Yeah.
And you were with Facebook. So tell us a little bit about being on the dark side.
Yeah.
Because, in many ways, a lot of the social divide that we talked about in the intro, a lot of that division can quite easily be traced back to social media and the facilitation of that division. Yeah. And you were part of that world, and I think MTV was certainly much earlier than social media. I remember MTV starting, but I don't know that was about as much divisional as it was. Or maybe it was tribal, certainly. But tell us about being on that dark side, and then Starts With Us seems to be almost the opposite. You're on the light side now. Welcome to the Force.
Yeah. I'm as with most things, and I think this is what Something Starts With Us asks us to do, is it's not quite that black and white. So
no,
certainly I started at MTV late 2009, early 2010, and Kanye had just interrupted Taylor at the VMAs. Jersey Shore had just had its season 1, so there was a real cultural moment that it had been a while since MTV had enjoyed. Yes. And it was sort of that time period was intersecting with this early phase of social media growth. And some of my mentors were still really close friends at the time, knew enough to hire somebody to manage sort of the social channels. Mm-hmm. And then were inclined to sort of give me a wide sandbox to play in. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, at that time, it wasn't that long ago, I remember when social media was fun. It was very sort of goofy and silly, and because so few people, in particular, senior executives, were watching, we could be, very authentic. We spoke in the first person really early on as a brand, because the brand had global penetration. MTV having been influential culturally, for certainly the preceding 20 to 30 years before I got there.
Well, people forget that people like Jon Stewart started out on there.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
People who really? And I'm like, oh yeah, he was a music DJ, right? He was great on there. He was this handsome Jewish guy with the curly black hair, and now he's the guy in Congress.
That's right.
Who's fighting for vets. But he launched his world in MTV.
100%. So many careers, the level of influence. And granted, that has changed over time as the media is fragmented. It's a well-worn story. But it's interesting. So it was all blue sky at that point. So the notion of social media as a tool set that could be applied to everything from PR and comms and consumer marketing and paid marketing. And, we knew, but crucially for us was about programming and community management. And our team, given that good timing and fortuitous timing, what we were able to do was, given all the autonomy that we had, figure out how to go big in big cultural moments, how to go small with niche communities, and as you said it, and named it, tribes. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that as social started to get big, and as MTV, as we as a brand started to get very, very big and very engaged in social channels, some of the early tribal behaviors, the sort of proto behaviors to what we see now, were very evident. So an example of that is, we'd have the Video Music Awards every year, the big award show. And, the fans could vote on the awards.
Yep.
And once in a while, if Nicki Minaj one year wasn't nominated for Video of the Year, we would hear it from the Barbies, right? That's the name of her fandom.
Yeah.
And the nature, by the way, that would often happen when she didn't have a music video that year. They would just get upset. Why wasn't she nominated? So
right.
Dis or misinformation, some of the early proto signals of that as well.
Yeah, of course.
But what we would hear from Nicki's fandom was, let's tank MTV's ratings. And it was this early sort of, and you're sort of looking at it going, oh man, like these guys love us when we're, giving Nicki props, and then they're perceiving a slight here and it's taking a different tone. It's like kind of a torches and pitchforks vibe here.
Yeah.
And you can sort of connect that to what eventually moved from, these sort of more pop areas of culture into the core of our politics and identities. Like that was evident at that time. So it's fascinating. So that, fast forward to 2016 and the way that, Trump's election played out and tribalism played out in this very clearly front and center way in our politics and in our communities and in our families. I landed at Facebook from a career perspective of trying, wanting to be in the next big thing in video. Facebook was launching Facebook Watch. They had this built-in audience. I was at a media company that was trying to get Facebook's audience all the time. I thought my diabolical plan was, I'm just going to go right to the source. I'm going to have all this audience as part of the original content team. And a couple months in, Cambridge Analytica happened, and, just a lot of the swirl had started to build. And I'll say about Facebook, Facebook takes a lot of heat, as it should, rightly, for behavior and governance that is reckless or mendacious at times. But being in the fold with the teams who worked at Facebook, these are some of the best and brightest people in the world who believe deeply in the mission to connect the world as a means to creating value and creating community. So that duality was fascinating, because you're on the ground sort of seeing that happen at the operational level and sort of get the sense that the machine has just gotten too big for any one person to control. I mean, one of the most interesting parts about being there was the pervading sense, I don't know if this is breaking any news, I don't think it is, that, people talk about the algorithm a lot and how they're tweaking it, and it feels very intentional. And the algorithm, the algorithms that surface content are so complex and so big. The idea that if I do A, B will happen is not really true there. There's lots of unintended consequences of doing A. And they have a huge team of people that range from engineers to ethicists to think about those consequences all the time. They are thinking deeply about it, but just when the scale is that big, the butterfly effect takes hold, and you end up having a lot of really.
So has the algorithm become a force unto itself beyond Facebook, beyond the teams, where it's just churning based on this evolution of what it started out as, and now it is the ghost in the machine. It is the android that took over the world, sort of thing.
Yeah, I wish I had an exciting talking point like that. I don't think it's it's not sentient, and frankly, it's not even sort of not well understood or out of control. It's just something where when you change something at the input, you don't know every single thing that's going to happen in terms of the way that.
So the ripple is much more vast than one would imagine.
That's right.
And simply, as you said, the butterfly effect, flapping the wings of a butterfly in Brazil, causing a hurricane in Japan. That's the butterfly effect for those who are not familiar. Yeah. Is that you're dropping an idea into this algorithm or something you want, which you may get, but you also may get 50,000 other things that you didn't see around the corner.
That's right.
And that is also, that's one of the things we talk about on here, about the advancements in technology. Oftentimes, the advancements in technology have devastatingly negative effects, not because they're intended to do so, but because we're solving problems that are one level deep. So if we want to solve the problem at one level deep, it's easy. Okay, we'll just have electric cars, because there's a climate problem. Okay, well, that'll fix it. Well, Not really, because if you buy electric cars, then you've got to put batteries in them. And then to put batteries in them, it's changed now. But initially, those batteries were made of cobalt and were made from kids in Africa who were mining that cobalt in horrendous conditions. And then you had batteries that had to be thrown away and you couldn't do anything with them. And then you had the electric cars that you plugged in into the system that is falling apart. And what the system is run on? Guess what? Oil and gas. So that's a one-level solution. Now, am I pro-electric cars? Of course I am, but that's not the point. It's looking at these deeper levels. Do you think there was ever, or now, I mean, because you've had an inside track there, and I think it's an interesting point before we get into what Starts With Us is all about.
Yeah.
Do you think there was ever an awareness or a conscious, like, let's put the brakes on around the divisional stuff? Because, Cambridge Analytica and the impact of that, for those of you who don't know, that is the major influence that caused all the kick up of a company originally out of the UK who impacted the Brexit and they impacted the American elections in 2016. It kicked up all kinds of mess and it used that algorithm. In your awareness, was there ever a point of like going, how do we put the brakes on? Because you talked about the inside, the team of good people.
Yeah.
And, because I've seen the Social Dilemma, and these are good people working inside with a really good, as you talked about, commitment to connect, and then realize, oh my God, I'm working for Darth Vader.
Listen, so in Facebook's intranet, there is constant analysis, flagging, moral questioning. Mark, I presume, still every week gets up in front of the entire company and takes some of the toughest questions you can take. Mm-hmm. There's not a fear of facing these questions down. There is a question of, and I'll refrain from a value judgment for the moment, this is a for-profit business. And the way that they make money is to optimize attention and then sell advertising against that attention. You know that. Everybody does that. Yeah. But in some sense, the algorithm then, if they're optimizing for the things that draw our attention, is holding up a mirror to who we are as a species and a people. And I think that there is an element of, what responsibility do they have to not create a super weapon that taps into the basest impulses we have as potentially tribal beings. And then there is a sense of what accountability do you have and do I have and do we all have for understanding our own intake and our own behavior. And I think that Starts With Us maps to that desire, which is that as much as we want to affect systemic change, and we can, and as much as we want to point out who else is doing something wrong, not just Facebook, but our cable news and our politicians, what do you control and how do we take and draw a line from what we control every single day to creating the kind of, not a utopian world, but the kind of world that's capable of solving deeper layer problems as you describe them. Right. And Starts With Us is starting there.
Well, I think there's something interesting there in what you said, because part of this cultural war thing is an us versus them at every possible level, black, white, religion, political, doesn't matter.
Masks, our school curricula.
Yeah, you can, it doesn't, it goes on, there's no end to it. But my argument for that is, okay, let's just look at that from a tribal level, from a ancestral psychology. Yeah, okay, we are tribal. All right. How we behave in those tribes is interesting because, we know that the social media thing is driven by dopamine hits, which is the feel-good hormone. But what most people don't realize, and because you just read the article I wrote on it, which is that when we bond with people, there is a release of a hormone called oxytocin. Oxytocin is the bonding hormone. It's what brings us together. But it's also the very same hormone that allows us to other. It's the hormone that allowed a Nazi soldier to be incredibly loving with his family and with his kids and throw bayonets at babies, in the camps, and be able to compartmentalize that is this drug called oxytocin. And so there's a level of internal that we're not taking, that we're constantly pointing at, well, it's social media and it's the left and those crazy ass cancel culture people, and it's the right and it's the radical people who want to storm the Capitol, blah, blah, blah. But it's this come back to yourself and take responsibility here. And that's what, again, I love about Starts With Us is, okay, let's say the algorithm is intentionally dividing. Let's say that that's the truth, because that gets if it bleeds, it leads. Do you not have the ability to put the phone down? If you don't, I understand that, because it is an addiction. Do something about that. Do you not have the ability to step outside of the argument and remove your own ego from needing to be right? If you don't, get some help. But blaming has never, ever worked. If you want to understand the impact of blaming, look at Chairman Mao and the Cultural Revolution. Right. Look at what happened in Russia with Stalin. Right? Millions and millions and millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people die over cultural wars because somebody's looking for somebody to be a solution, whether that's Mao or whether that's Lenin or whether that's Trump or whether that's Biden or whether that's whoever it is. And it's the level of personal responsibility that I love about Starts With Us that says, can you, whoever you are, CEO, dry cleaner, street sweeper, and everybody in between, can you reach across the aisle? Can you do that?
Yeah.
Talk to us about what drove that and what was such a pull for you, as I said, from being on the other side.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I have to start with Daniel Lubetzky, our fearless founder, the initial founding partner. For those who aren't familiar with Daniel, aside from having had this incredible, entrepreneurial and business success with Kind Snacks and Kind Bars, Daniel comes from a Mexican Jewish immigrant family. They came in his mid-teens. Daniel's father is a Holocaust survivor, and the imprint of those experiences, and in particular the very darkest outcomes, loom very large in his life and are some of the animating principles behind all of his work, well predating Kind. Daniel's been in the bridge building space through his other philanthropies and in the One Voice movement in the Middle East, connecting Arab and Israeli moderates for the better part of 3 decades. So when this predated me, it Starts With Us, but when Daniel and some of the initial founding partners and that early sort of Tiger team working on it were looking out the window the way we are and saying, listen, my family has experienced the logical conclusion of what we're seeing out in the world today. Yeah, it doesn't get better; it gets worse. And he feels and felt at that moment, or not only responsibility to do something, but a unique experience both in his personal life and in the other bridge building work he had done. Now, crucially, Daniel takes an entrepreneurial approach to his social impact, all his social impact efforts. And Daniel's always been wired as a marketing and communications minded entrepreneur and CEO. Mm-hmm. So Starts With Us, and the way they connected with me was there are many thousands of bridge building organizations in existence, and pardon me, and an anomalously high number of them, a weirdly high percentage of them, are incredibly excellent and do really deep, valuable, impactful work that often takes the shape of bringing people together for intermediated discussions or for trainings or for panel discussions, and they're amazing. A challenge there, or maybe something that may be missing in the space, is that all that depth often sacrifices breadth.
Yes.
And when we see what moves at the speed and scale of culture, to take perhaps the right-wing sort of ecosystem as an example, although it exists everywhere, certainly on the left, but you look at the right-wing media ecosystem and you see PragerU, if you're familiar with them, you see obviously Breitbart, you see Daily Caller, and the notion that the temperature of the dialogue can be influenced using the tools at our disposal, in particular media and technology. Daniel saw that and said, we got to get in the mix and start to add something different, to help change the temperature. So I'm here, and the team that we've built here, the way that we've built up Starts With Us, is because I want to take whatever dark arts I've learned in my history and apply them to one of the foremost challenges I think of our time, perhaps one of the most important ones, because what's at stake, is yes, when it's writ large, absolutely, it's the potential for violence and civil war and insurrection. We've already seen that, but fundamentally, it's also our ability to solve problems. Yes. It's our ability to be constructive about how do we fill potholes on Main Street, how do we make sure that our kids have a strengthening and challenging, but also safe school experience and curriculum. How do we ideally make sure the earth doesn't heat up another 10 degrees? That would be nice. And listen, issues will always divide us, but Starts With Us comes at it from the concept and the fundamental belief that we need to achieve our mission. We need to habituate the daily practice of what we affectionately call the 3 C's: curiosity, compassion, and courage. And that if we can do that, that will be an antidote and a countervailing force to the many horrible habits we have all picked up, me surely foremost among them, to write each other off and to log off and to filter bubble ourselves. And to, these are elements of a digitally disintermediated culture, a less empathetic culture, a COVID isolated culture. The loneliness epidemic predated COVID. So we're trying to find common ground values that allow us to constructively work together past divisive issues.
And, that is such important work. And just to sort of close up this part one of the show, I want to ask you about, because, we started out asking about meaning, and you talked about how you'd always had this sense of wanting to achieve and have that achievement. And achievement in the Western world, certainly in a neo-capitalist world, is stuff. It's X number of dollars in the bank. It's a kind of house. It's a kind of car. It's a kind of lifestyle. And it's interesting to me that you're part of something now. Of course, there's going to be literal, physical, in the world, tangible successes and achievements, but it's kind of a nebulous achievement, isn't it? I mean, you're right. You're trying to achieve something which is a cultural shift.
Yeah.
How is that going to be for you? This guy driven by achievement, and it's easy to wake up one morning and go, wow, we impacted 20,000 people yesterday. Oh shit, we've still got another 8.2 billion people to reach. Or 7.2 billion people to reach. It's very easy to go to the other side of that. Tell us about what that's like for you, because you're driven by achievement.
Yeah. So I and my team are well aware that we are sprinting without knowing where the finish line is.
Good. Thank you.
And on the one sense, I think that will just drive me to run as fast as I can until I can't run anymore. And I think that is what the urgency of our mission demands. At a practical level, I am a human being and my team are human beings, and we need milestones and things that help us feel good about progress. We need to be able to measure the sense in which we are achieving that goal. We do have those, and we see signals in, we just crossed. I mean, it feels like, a drop in the bucket relative to what we want to accomplish from a movement building standpoint, but we just crossed our 500,000 follow across social media platforms without spending a whole bunch of crazy money. And that is a sense that there is a market and a demand out there for the kind of message and movement that we're building. Now, social follows aren't necessarily the depth of a relationship we want. So we work hard to bring those folks deeper into the fold, signing up for our email address, for our email newsletter, taking our pledge, potentially local chapters as we look to scale up. We're building an app, so app installs will be important as we are taking this media and technology approach to building the movement. So we do have milestones and a sense of what growth looks like, and we do have a longitudinal sense of what we want to see out in the world as it relates to behaviors and as it relates to trust in our fellow citizens. So there are milestones, but yeah, it's different than looking for policy change where there's a discrete win. Yeah. We're trying to change culture, and I think we're just gonna keep sprinting and and knowing that this is about a way of life more than it is a discrete victory.
Well, it's a wonderful thing that you're doing, and I want to encourage people to be part of it. As I said, I'm a founding partner. Some of the, if you go onto their site and you look around, you'll see some of who the founding partners are, and the people very well. And as Tom was just talking about, the understanding of the value, the importance of this is vital, and you'll see that by the names of the people who are across cultural lines who are jumping on board and saying, "Yeah, this matters." So, with that said, Tom, please let people know how they can be part of this movement. Let them find, share with us the URLs that they can go to, or the hashtags or whatever it is that they can find, and we'll of course put those all in the show notes.
The very most important thing to me is for your audience and listeners to practice those 3 C's every single day: curiosity, compassion, and courage. If you go to startswith.us/join, you can sign up for our newsletter where we will give you tips and inspiration to do that every day. You can find us across social. We're on all your favorite platforms. So follow us there for more content and tips to practice those 3 C's every day, and keep a lookout for our app launching later in the year. But that starts with us, startswith.us/join.
Fabulous. And as I said, we will make sure that all of that is in the show notes. So we're going to be back in one click with Tom. Until then, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about how you can apply more curiosity, more courage, more compassion, more caring in every interaction that you have. You are the solution. You're not the problem. You're the solution. You're only the problem if you've not committed to being the solution. We'll be back in one click. Till then, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious.